It's showtime, and here I am live, 7 p.m. in UK, the state-controlled Britain, 7 p.m. GMT, however you want to say it. Your questions will be absolutely welcomed, and if you want to put a QQQ in front of your question to make it zing out, that would be really great. Super chats are always appreciated, stickers, everything. So, no questions yet in the chat, so it's not a big problem, but we have got the late Richard Smith. Here we are, sitting in his chair, getting his microphone sorted. The world's best nutritionist. Sorry, I'm going to maybe mute that for a moment, Rich, or whatever you want to do. We've got No Carb Barb, which I do love that name. Good morning for another hour from Southern California, the feral grandmother. 1 p.m. and already 90 degrees Fahrenheit in Texas. Must be time for some unsweetened iced tea. Jonathan, of course, carnivore muscle. I'm here. So you have to say that in an English language, but for some reason I just said it in sort of Cockney. I don't know why I did that. Don, hello Don. Hey Larry. So this is very good. I think I've caught up with everybody. Oh no, hang on a minute. We've got Deb greeting from Oklahoma. Beautiful day under the shade of the trees. I better check my sound actually. Yeah, the microphone is good, but I think I need to go into my hearing aids for this. Let me just do that. Just make sure that my hearing aids are working. We're there, I think. And ahoy, ahoy from Cornwall. So how are you, Richard?
All good. Is the mic working okay?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm nearly sorted with my hearing aids, actually. I've got to go back one more time because there's a big problem with the right one. But somebody said I look very distracted since I've had the new hearing aids, and that's because they're constantly giving me issues, but we'll get it all sorted. Have you had a good week?
Yeah, all good. There's something wrong with my setup this end. It's not working the way that it should, I think. But we'll get through it.
Okay. Well, you sound pretty good. Jonathan's always the arbiter of what sounds good and what looks good. He's very good with all that sort of stuff. So just make sure that my mic is on. My mic is working. My hearing aids are working. So, right, let's go for the question, shall we?
Let's do it.
Big Blue. If you want to gain or lose fat, what lever? Oh, so obviously a fan of yours, because you use that expression. What lever should I pull, the protein or the fat? What affects fat more? And here's a follow-up. How many grams of protein and fat do you eat each day? So that's Big Blue done.
Brilliant question. Look, there's no straight answer in regards to this because the lever that we can pull is both. The first lever that I would recommend to pull would be the fat lever. The reason for this is that protein is the most important macronutrient. Don't shoot me. There are followers of good friends of Stephen and I who are big advocates of high fat. And I'm an advocate of fat. Fat is essential. We shouldn't demonize fat. But if we look at where fat comes in nature, fat always comes with protein. And vice versa. Any animal proteins that we consume come with natural fats. If we look at the amino acid profile in animal proteins compared to the fats, then the proteins contain a complete amino profile. And it's the amino acids that allow us to make every cell within the body. So from a simplistic point of view, we consume animal proteins. We can do this from plants also, but we are lacking some essential amino acids from plant compounds, and we don't do this as efficiently. But we consume animal proteins, we break down these animal proteins into amino acids, and then we reconstitute these amino acids into human proteins. These human proteins go on to heal, build, and repair everything within the body. So this is how essential these amino acids are. I don't believe that we can obtain all of them from just the fat. I may be wrong. I haven't seen any research to suggest that we can. Therefore, I always predominate the protein. So protein comes first. If we are looking to gain or lose fat, then the easiest lever to pull is we either, if we want to gain weight, we increase the dietary fat. If we want to lose the weight, we reduce the dietary fat. Now, there are caveats to this. I'm not a big proponent of doing this if you are not healed. I don't believe anybody should come into this lifestyle and try to restrict the fat. I don't believe anybody should come into this lifestyle and fast for prolonged periods of time. I believe that healing the gut is job number one. Once we have healed the gut, once the body is healed, and once the body is in its natural level of homeostasis, then we can begin to pull these additional levers to achieve aesthetic goals, because that's what this fat loss is. Now, remember that fat loss is a side effect of being healthy, not the other way around. We are told in modern society that we reduce the fat and we become healthy, but it doesn't work that way. We become healthy, then we lose the fat. So healing the gut is job number one. So I don't recommend anybody do this. So anybody listening to the call who wants to lose a little bit of weight, just remember that we need to heal first. So once you're in that situation, once you're ready to lose additional body fat, then the first lever that we can pull is the dietary body fat, maintaining a sustained level of dietary protein. Now, my recommended level is around 1 gram per pound of body weight for a man and around 0.9 grams per pound of body weight, or ideal body weight for a woman. So if you want to, and we need to do this in segments of 7 pound or half a stone. So if we are 10 stone, for example, that's 140 pound. But if we want to be 130 pound or 120 pound, we aim for this in segments of 7 pounds. So instead of the 140, we aim for 133. So therefore, a man would consume 133 grams of protein, and the fat that comes with that generally. But then we would reduce that amount of fat periodically in order to achieve the goal. Now, when we reduce the dietary fat, we ramp up endogenous beta oxidation or lipolysis of stored body fat. I don't recommend doing this every day. I do recommend that we do it cyclically. So we could do a few days of dietary fat that comes with the protein, and then we could do a few days of leaner cuts. I think it's important to mix lean cuts and fatty cuts, because this is the way that we would have done, consumed food through our evolutionary period. I don't believe that we can consume just lean protein constantly, because this will lead to what's called rabbit starvation. So we do need the fat. So we can do this incrementally and through step-by-step processes throughout the week, where we consume the amount of dietary fat that comes with the protein, and then where we do leaner cuts. Now, the first protocol with this is removing the fats that come with cooking, or if you're consuming dairy, or so if we're consuming raw milk or cheese, for example, or if we're cooking with added fats, this is the first thing that we can pull. We can remove the dairy, we can remove the cheese, we can remove or reduce the amount of fats that we add to cooking. This alone will help you shift that weight. Now you can implement this, and that is going to give you the biggest bang for the buck. And also, if you want to gain weight, then you can increase the protein slightly if you wanted to. So anywhere for a man between 1 to 1.5. And again, similar numbers for a woman, 0.9 to say 1.4, 1.5. And that's what I would recommend also if you were suffering with osteoporosis or osteopenia. So we do need to consume a little bit more of the dietary protein there. But then we would consume additional fats in order to gain that weight. It's not going to build muscle any quicker. Muscle is built from animal proteins and adequate fat, so we're not going to gain any more muscle per se, but we are going to add a little bit of stored body fat. It could be in the intracellular myolipids, which is fat stored in the muscle, or it could be in the adipose tissue. But this is how we would gain weight, and this is what I would do during a bulking season. Now, I have tried and implemented the opposite a few times also, where we increase the fat exponentially and reduce the animal proteins, because it's the animal proteins, particularly the leucine and the alanine, the amino acids within the protein that is eliciting the insulin response. And ultimately, it's the insulin response that's going to break the bonds on the glycerol backbone and send fatty acids into the fat cell. So by reducing the amount of dietary fat, we can actually, the dietary protein, and increasing the dietary fat, irrespective of caloric value, we can see a fat loss through doing this also. But again, the point that I made, first and foremost, protein is the most important macronutrient. So I would do this only when the others have failed or you've stalled for a prolonged period of time. Now, there's lots of cofactors and other factors and levers involved with this, but we'll get into this at a later time. How much do I consume? So I'm not tracking currently, but I consume well over 1 kilo a day of meat, somewhere between 1 and 1.5 kilos. Some days it's closer to 2. I consume generally 1 to 2 meals a day, generally 2. I eat around 4 p.m. and around 8 p.m. It's going to be later tonight, obviously, because we're live. But each time it's between 700 and a kilo of meat, 700 grams and a kilo of meat each time. I don't add fats to cooking. I cook without the added fats. And the protein that I consume, my protein of choice is chuck steak, which is one of the cheapest cuts. It's the end of the ribeye, half the price of rump. So it's incredibly low cost and easy to maintain. Ribeye for me is too expensive. I do eat it if I'm out, but it's you don't get an awful lot of bang for your buck. So rump would be my next protocol. Skirt is the leaner cut that I'll go for, and I'm also a big advocate of lamb. But yeah, around 1 kilo. So if we were to divide this, so this is my formula. It's divided by 4.5 because animal proteins are typically between 20 to 25% of the weight of the protein. So when you have a piece of beef or lamb or chicken, for example, and that weighs 100 grams, it's not 100 grams of protein. And that's very important to remember. It's anywhere between 1/4 and 1/5 of this. So as a ballpark figure, 4.5 works out as an average. So for me, that's well over 200 grams of animal proteins that I consume each day. But I work out several times a week through several different training processes. Obviously, I've begun resistance training again, and my body requires more. I can feel my body asking me for more dietary protein. So I've increased it a little more recently. It's a lot less when I was doing the endurance sports. And the fat content was required to be a little higher when I was doing this, obviously, because I needed more fats for energy. We can work out, an exact figure, Big Blue, for those who are, so which we've done for a good friend of mine, Steve Larson, who's competing this weekend. We've worked out exactly what he needs to consume based on macronutrients and proteins and fats in regards to how much to fill, completely bulk. So we're going through a bulking phase with him, but don't overthink it. Just eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full, unless you're aiming to build muscle for a specific reason or for athletic performance. But yeah, in simple terms, that's it.
Well, right. Okay. And if you want long terms, you need to join the school group. Yeah, we got lots of questions. Not every question will be answered in such a lengthy way. So there's lots of questions. Please be patient. We do try to get through every one, but also we try to answer every question properly. So anyway, Laura has donated £5, which is great. Thank you for the 1-to-1, Richard. The plan is working. The weight is coming off already and feeling good. So that's good. Fantastic. And that's what we like. And that's a really nice one for somebody else to read who's thinking of coming off this way of eating. 1 year carny, 39-year-old female, beef, bacon, eggs, butter, lamb, sometimes Greek yogurt, loose stools almost always, only go every few days, usually close to quitting. Well, it might be that you're eating too much fat. I mean, that's quite a fatty, array of food there with the lamb and the butter. but I don't know how often you're eating, how much you're eating, when you're eating. Are you drinking too much water? If your urine is clear, that could be causing it. If your urine is clear, you're drinking too much fluid, and you should cut that back. And just simply eating and drinking to hunger and thirst works. So it could be that. What do you reckon, Richard?
Yeah, brilliant question. Look, there could be a number of factors going on with this. The butter, the Greek yogurt, all contributors to loose stools. And the reason for this, or at least the main reason, it's to do with the bile reabsorption. So what I'd recommend in regards to this, which is a protocol Stephen and I usually recommend, is to consume less more often. So consume more meals, but smaller, with less fats. Try not to add the fats to cooking. Butter and Greek yogurt. If I eat Greek, and I love Greek yogurt, by the way. So when I fall off the wagon or when I feel like being naughty, I consume Greek yogurt and I love it. But like literally within seconds, I can feel the gurgles in my stomach with consuming the Greek yogurt. And I know that I need to go to the toilet soon. And it passes straight through me. Now, I'm fully adapted. So it's not a case of the bile in regards to the Greek yogurt with this, but it could be the casein. It could be the lactose. Who knows? But I'd like to think that I'm fairly adapted. But Greek yogurt does this with me. Excessive amounts of butter and any excess amounts of fats with cooking will also do this. So what I would suggest is aim for 3 meals a day, 3 to 4 even. Work towards the 3. I'd make the largest meal either 2 or 3. So the smallest meal 1, the largest either the second or the third, depending on how you are with food before bed. Roughly 3.5 to 4 hours apart, but reduce the fats. Remove the Greek yogurt and take the butter out and see how you get on. In regards to the beef, ground beef is known for doing this, especially the rendered fat. So don't pour the fat back over the beef. Maybe aim for leaner cuts of beef and see how you get on. But this is very common. If you still struggle with this, then you can look at supplementing with taurine and glycine. I recommend half a teaspoon of each, 20 to 30 minutes prior to a meal. This will help with bile production and bile reabsorption, which can help negate loose stools. But stick with it. You're 1 year in. No doubt that your ketones are in the form of beta-hydroxybutyrate, therefore you're fully adapted. It's just additional lever pulling. So stick with it, make those changes, and let us know how you get on.
Excellent. Something close to my heart here from the Feral Grandma, $5. Not the money, by the way. The question, any good science to the use of vibration plates? Well, yes. Don't forget, we both like, well, for me, let's talk about me. I can't say for Richard. We like personal experience and, what we see clinically with people that book us for consults. I personally use a vibration plate every so often. I find it is absolutely brilliant for reducing aches and pains, joint pains, those sort of thing. There is well-supported research and the mechanisms are sort of multifactorial, but you will get neuromuscular activation. I mean, one of the things with the X3 bar is many people do the X3 bar workout on a vibration plate because the vibration plate is what's called an uneven or unstable surface. So when you stand on an uneven surface or something that's vibrating like that, all of your muscles are working to keep you upright and balance you. So every time you're moving and shifting, it's one of the reasons I like when people do the shoulder press. I prefer them to keep one of the dumbbells up and do the other arm and then bring that one down. So what's happening there? And stand, by the way, I don't really like standing exercises. So what's happening there is you're making it uneven. The weight is uneven, just the distribution is uneven. But then when you push this one up and bring that one down, same thing. So you get a little bit of a core workout. But there's quite a lot really to it. But it's a great question. Do you use them, Richard, or do you not really care about them?
I don't. Look, I care about everything. Any additional lever to pull, but it's not an area that I would have any expert knowledge in. So yeah, I'm happy with your answer.
Yeah, and there is science behind it. And when I started rehab, which was this isn't even new. I mean, 15 years ago, vibration plates were used for back pain and knee pain, and definitely improves things. So now we're going to go to the starred questions, because I think we've done all the super chats. So we're going to get into order now. And if any super chats come in, obviously you jump the queue. So hello to you both. Just a question on what is the carnivore. So I think there might be a typo. I've read it how I want to read it, unless there's some other way of being carnivore. But if you're strict carnivore, you're talking about this way of eating, you're looking at 100% animal products. Simple as that. But to be called a carnivore, if you look at the definition, or the dictionary definition, it's over 70%. As long as over 70% of your meals are coming from animal products, then you are pretty much a carnivore. So 70% is the threshold. So I'm going to be really niggly here for people, because people say, oh, you're 100% carnivore. You have salt and you have water. Well, water isn't carnivore. Salt isn't carnivore. If you do that animal product definition, water is water. But that's really niggly. So I would say, if you were having coffee and, going off piste a little bit, I don't know, with an avocado or some sort of plant additions, but you're still 95%, you can still say you're carnivore, can't you? And even if you're 80%, I still think you can say that, if you're having some berries and all that. But the more strict you are, the better you feel. That's what I found. I deliberately went 100% because I wanted informed decision to happen. I wanted to know exactly how good I could feel. And when I went from 95% to 100%, the difference wasn't an extra 5%. It was out of this world. But I do find strict carnivore for a long period of time. Sometimes I just want to go off piste and have a little variety. It doesn't happen that much, but hopefully that's a good answer for you. What do you reckon, Rich?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's lots of interpretations of a carnivore lifestyle. Let's not forget that a carnivore lifestyle is still a ketogenic lifestyle. So we look at keto and carnivore as being two separate things, but in my opinion, they are one and the same. A carnivore lifestyle is what I would regard as a plant-free ketogenic lifestyle. But look, even through, a carnivore for me is an ancestral appropriate lifestyle. So what does that mean to me? It means, what would we have consumed through our evolutionary period? And to me, it's anything that is directly hit by sunlight or once alive. So basically animal proteins, natural fats, and seasonal fruits. So very, very little fruits. So, by default, it means that we would have consumed fruit at certain times of year that were locally sourced. So if you are that type of person, that way inclined in regards to consuming the animal proteins, the organ meats, we would have consumed organ meats, we would have drunk the blood, we'd have eaten the connective tissue, the bone marrow, all of these things. And we probably, in my opinion, we would have consumed seasonal fruit. So, and what I find within the community recently is that it's incredibly dogmatic in regards to, that's not carnivore, this isn't keto. Look, as you said, Steve, if the majority of your units of energy, and we use that term over calories because calories don't really exist, not in the context that we believe them to anyway. If the majority of your units of energy are coming from animal proteins and natural fats, then in my opinion, you're carnivore. If you're consuming things that are not solely animal proteins, that doesn't make you not carnivore. There was a friend of mine ate out recently and said, I'm no longer carnivore. And it's like, well, you still are really, just because you've eaten something that is a vegetable compound as a one-off. You don't undo all of the positive work, and this is very much a case of the rule and not the exception. But, as you say, it's a lifestyle that predominates animal proteins and natural fats, in my opinion.
Yeah. We've got a blackberry bush just over there. They're out early, by the way, because of all of the weather manipulation. But anyway, so that's free food. Why would you not have a little bit of that? So I agree with you. Right. Okay. Mama Bear, how do I know if I'm taking the right amount of electrolytes? Well, the first thing is do you need to take them in the first place? Because if you're not having muscle cramps or twitching and you've got normal blood pressure and you're sleeping great mental focus, normal heart rhythm, no excessive thirst, stable energy throughout the day, you might not need them. That's the first thing. So that's what I would say. And it's a bit like, because the reason I'm saying that is because someone was asking about bloods the other day, and I just said, well, if you took your pet to the vet and said, I want a whole set of bloods taken, and they would say, well, what's wrong with the dog, or what's wrong with your pet? And if you said, well, nothing really, I just want a whole set of bloods and then I want to give some supplements, hopefully the vet would say, well, actually, if there's nothing wrong, we won't do any of those tests because you don't need to waste your money. Now, in saying that, of course, we've been dysfunctional for many years and eaten all the wrong foods for many years and been sold loads of lies. So many people come to this and they're absolutely in need of things like electrolytes. So how would you answer that, Rich, as you are the expert? I mean, you are the UK's leading nutritionist.
Appreciate that.
Look,
it's, when people say to me, living this way can't be the optimal way because you need to supplement with electrolytes. Well, the fact is that, if you're in an ideal situation, then you do not. If you are living a true ancestral appropriate lifestyle, you don't need to supplement with anything. The difference is many of us are not living that lifestyle. Many of us are coming from a lifestyle in which we've consumed lots of carbohydrates, we're insulin resistant, we've caused lots of damage, oxidative stress and inflammation. The stomach acid is very low. The bile production and reabsorption is out of sync. The gut microbes are not functioning properly. So there's a whole host of things that when we gravitate into this, it isn't ancestral appropriate. So it's about getting back to this. Now, the reason that many need to supplement with electrolytes in the first place is that we come from a state of high insulin. So when we gravitate into this, insulin drops, and insulin is what pulls sodium back into the blood from the kidneys. So when we are living this lifestyle, there's a drop in insulin, and now insulin is no longer pulling in adequate amounts of sodium in the short term. So this can lead to what is known as keto flu. So replacing lost electrolytes, particularly sodium in that instance, is critically important. Now, through an evolutionary process, we would have consumed our electrolytes from the blood. We would have drunk the blood. We would have consumed the connective tissue and the bone marrow and the soft bones, and all of this would have contained high quantities, and organ meats, by the way, which many of us don't consume. So we can get these things, but also modern life doesn't mirror what we would have been living through our evolutionary period. We exercise and there's lots of stresses involved. So we can supplement with additional salts and electrolytes. In order to establish the right amount, listen to your body. So some days when you salt your meal, you add a little bit of salt. Some days you don't add any. Some days you add a lot. Now, you do this intuitively. And it's the same when it comes to electrolytes, which is what I have in there. I take electrolytes throughout the day because I find I function a lot better with them. I work long hours. I train. I work out several times a week. So my requirement for electrolytes comes outside of what I would deem to be an evolutionary appropriate lifestyle, because I'm trying to achieve certain goals. I'm by the PC constantly. Now, this involves my brain working lots and lots and lots, which means that I require a lot more potassium. So the brain uses a lot more potassium when you're in that situation. So our lives today are very much outside of what I would deem to be ancestral appropriate, but consume it and use it as and when you feel required, as you would with the salt on your meal. Now, what I would recommend is less more often is better than more less often. Another one of my little sayings that Steve takes the mick out of me with. But you're better off consuming less more often than a large amount less often, because you're gonna maintain a stable supply. So that's what I tend to do I add a little bit of electrolytes or salt or whatever it may be to the water that I drink. But I do this intuitively. After a workout, I consume more. If I feel like I need to, if I've been running, etc. But I do this intuitively. So that is the best way to establish that. But what I would add is that we require far more than we're led to believe by studies. So, and I'll just give you one example. Sodium, for example, we're told to consume less than 1.5 grams or 1,500 milligrams each day. But studies suggest that we need to consume well over 6, maybe as much as 10,000 milligrams of sodium a day. And this was a study that covered 17 countries, over 100,000 participants. And maybe we can show this in the school group later at 8 o'clock. But try to do it intuitively.
Yeah, that's a good idea about the school, by the way, for people that don't know what Richard is talking about. We run a school community. I'll show you on the screen, if you like, what it looks like. And how this works is you can join and you can ask lots of questions, and we answer lots of questions with this way. So if you don't get to the questions here, you can also go into our classroom, which is part of the deal. If you're very active, you can open all these up straight away by just being active and active and active, or you can get through the queue and you can pay a one-off extra fee and you can have all of these courses available to you. Had loads of good reviews, especially about the fruit and veg, dairy and protein. Dairy, I had somebody in the week say, this is amazing. For years, I've been wondering why I have problems with dairy. It's the first time I've ever truly understood it. And of course, the calendar is absolutely jam-packed full of meetings. So for instance, this week we've had one at 8 o'clock on a Monday. That's tomorrow. We had one on Wednesday Wellness. We did one at 6 p.m. on a Thursday. And we also did the one tonight at 7. And we've got one at 8 coming up where we speak for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes in the community. And you can answer your questions there. I'll put a link in the chat. See a few people already saying it is an amazing resource. Thank you, everybody. And stop sharing the screen there. I don't want to go on about it too much. But yes, it's a thing you should join. It's still at least half the price of most other school communities. So get in while the price is like that. Once you get in at that low price, that is guaranteed for life. We will never put the price up. Right, No Carb Barb has done a super chat. Thank you so much. $4.99. I think there's a few typos in here, but we know what she's saying. And that is, have either of you heard that creatine can lower blood sugar? What is better, monohydrate or hydrochloride? Some are suggesting 20 to 40 grams, not 5 grams. Well, yes, I mean, creatine supplementation increases the GLUT4 transporter, you know, the expression of that and the translocation, independent of insulin, by the way. So that's one of the things apparently that happens. So it obviously enhances the storage of glucose, and there's quite a few other things. But I'm not going to speak because Richard is the expert when it comes to supplements. So Richard, do you want to add? I've just put my little 2 pence in there.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. It's exactly that, the translocation of the GLUT4 transporter. You know, it's what is most effective. Monohydrate, in my opinion, monohydrate is the cheapest. It's the most researched. The serving size with this, some are suggesting 20 to 40. Yeah, look, 5 I don't think is enough. 5 we can obtain from around a kilo of red meat a day. I tend to consume between, 50. I supplement with around 15 grams a day, giving me 20. For brain function, studies suggest over 20 grams, maybe as much as 25. That anything more than that seems excessive. I do know people who consume considerably more. I've experimented up to 50 grams. It seems like a lot. 50 grams. It can cause gastro distress, so I don't recommend jumping in at that amount, is particularly in the beginning. Start small. My suggestion would be monohydrate, 5 grams twice a day, therefore giving 10 grams total. HCl seems to be better tolerated with those who can't tolerate monohydrate. We need to take a lot less. It seems to be more bioavailable, but it doesn't seem to be as beneficial in those where monohydrate works best. So if you supplement with monohydrate and you don't seem to be achieving the benefit, or you seem to be carrying water retention, which isn't very common, I mean, it's very rare in regards to monohydrate, then you can try the HCl. If the monohydrate is causing gastro distress, then try the HCl. I wouldn't recommend the HCl over the monohydrate unless the monohydrate is causing problems. But if you are consuming monohydrate, I suggest starting with 5 grams twice a day, so 10 grams, and then around a kilo of meat, therefore giving you 15 grams, working up to maybe 20, 25. But I didn't see any benefit over 25 grams. And the sweet spot for me seems to be around 25 grams a day. So that's what I supplement with is around 5 to 10 grams of supplemented monohydrate. And the rest comes from animal proteins.
Excellent. That's a good answer. And by the way, I flashed up a few of the people who were in school saying how great it is and it's a good resource and all that sort of stuff. Meatastic. Hi, Meatastic. I mean, I feel like we could be doing an impression of Dave Smash, I think he was called. It's fantastic. Anyway, right. Hello, gents. Can the diet influence getting floaters in the eyes, please? Well, it certainly can lower the amount of floaters in the eyes. I can speak from personal experience. When I went carnivore, I saw my floaters absolutely reduce. So I'm assuming the reverse could be true because the high carb diet seemed to generate them. But all I can talk about is obviously I did get floaters when I was eating skim milk, porridge oats, fresh fruit and veg, freshly squeezed orange juice, and all that stuff, and not having red meat, not having fat in my diet. And I had loads and loads of floaters. And once I went low carb, they started to go a little bit. In keto, they went a bit more. On carnivore, they really reduced. I mean, floaters are typically, they're just protein aggregates or debris in this sort of gel in your eye, and some collagen fibers as well, and some inflammatory cells. So there's lots of different things and reasons to have them. I think the reduction in inflammation is the main thing. That's why I think my floaters went. And also I do get people that I have consults with tell me that their floaters have gone. So you're eliminating things like plant lectins, you know, Richard's favorites, oxalates and phytates, reducing omega-6, which is just, you know, to be honest, just getting rid of the seed oils for a start. You've also got those stable insulin levels. You're not spiking and dropping, spiking and dropping. So that could also be one of the things. So you haven't got any inflammatory cascades going on. So the lower cytokine production, I think, is one of those things. It's throughout the body, but it's also going to benefit the eyes, I think. So you've got reduced inflammation in the retinal blood vessels, and you've got an improved blood retinal barrier as well, because we've got the proper fats going in, cell membranes are more stable. Also, the high blood glucose fluctuations are not in your diet anymore. And we do know that you're going to get advanced glycated end products when you have a lot of carbohydrates. So we're getting rid of those as well. Glycated proteins, all gone. So I think diet really can influence floaters, but carnivore, keto, they seem to improve it, and not being carnivore, keto seems to make them worse. Did you want to add anything, Rich?
Nailed it.
Thank you very much. That's very good. Oh, I think you'll like this next question, actually. It's from Samantha, the wonderful Samantha. I eat a lot of game. We hunt, so I eat a lot of very lean meat. Is it okay to eat lean meat and lots of butter and add lots of butter most of the time? Or is it important to also eat fatty cuts of meat?
Brilliant question. So look, I work with lots of clients who don't like fatty cuts of meat. Fatty cuts of meat are critically important. Yes, you can add the fat in from things like butter. And Steve, you can get into this when I mention what I'm going to say, because you know, this is something you've researched extensively. But the odd chain and even chain fatty acids, they work differently within the body. We need both, but the even chain fatty acids predominate hormone production. So if we're eating lean protein and adding in the odd chain fatty acids from things like butter, then the hormone production doesn't work as efficiently as it should. So adding in lots of butter and additional fats doesn't work the same way as fatty cuts of animal proteins. We need fat from animal proteins. You know, I've worked with lots of carnivores who eat lean and add butter and will argue, well, I'm getting all the fats that I need, but they suffer with hormonal problems and aches and pains and so on and so forth. We need the fat from animal proteins, the odd chain fatty acids, which are critically important, but they don't make the basis of cholesterol, for example, as well as the even chain fatty acids. So look, if you live in that lifestyle and you're eating lean game with adding fats, then you're already winning. But it is important, in my opinion, to add in some of the animal proteins, natural fats. And people will say to me, look, I don't like eating the fat. Your body loves the fat. It's something that you've been, I think, brought up with from a young age. We're told to fear the fat on the bacon and the fat on the pork and the fat on the beef. These fats are incredibly nutrient dense, absolutely delicious, and I preference them over the meat itself now. That's how much I love the fat within my chuck steak, for example. So it's just a case of training your body to get back into this and overcoming the fear of fat. Fat is critically important.
Yeah, it's brilliant. That's a brilliant answer, actually. Yeah, and I think just one of the really simple things is, and Richard's hit the nail on the head, is when you look at odd chain and even chain fatty acids. I have actually done a couple of Substacks about it. I'll tell you one that people don't talk about, and we talk about a negative, but also it gets across how the body is so remarkable. If you have an odd chain fatty acid, which maybe you'd find in dairy, for instance, well, one of the reasons why that can put weight on people is the body breaks those fatty acids down in groups of 2 carbons. So when you have an odd chain, you end up with a 3-carbon fragment, and the body absolutely loves taking that to liver and making that into glucose. So when you have a lot of dairy going into you, you are also ramping up your gluconeogenesis via this very specific pathway, which is an excellent pathway. The body's really smart. But of course, if you're trying to lose some body fat, you want to avoid that odd chain fatty acid because you want to avoid that effect. So yeah, I think I would go for the variety as well. Yes, you're going to be fine, but I think you're going to thrive if you add some quality fats or even some organ meat, those sort of things. But yeah, it's a great question. The Feral Grandma, by the way, has gifted 5 memberships to my YouTube channel. So thank you. That's a really nice way of helping other people to get exclusive access to content before anyone else sees it. So the Feral Grandmother, thank you so much for that. That's very kind. Let's have a look at the next question, which is from Lauren. And she's saying, I'll be carnivore 2 years this November. Well done. Mostly 1 meal a day. 95% carnivore, I should say. What gives with my A1C fluctuating 5.8 to 5.6, back to 5.8? Some say our red blood cells last longer. What gives? Yeah, well, your glycation of your red blood cells is very dynamic, absolutely, very dependent on what you eat, but it is also dependent on how long your red blood cells last. Now, many people are thinking that this is a myth, but I will tell you, labs are now looking at doing what's called an HbA1c, which is an adjusted HbA1c, and actually factoring in the life of the red blood cells. It's a real thing. All right. So people like Robert Cyrus who think it's BS, sorry, it isn't. The life of the red blood cells is really important. So what's happening, the A1C or HbA1c, as we should properly call it, is a calculation, and it makes the assumption your red blood cells live a certain amount of time. Now, when I started in phlebotomy 16 years ago now, I was told to watch out for artificially low HbA1c if anyone was hemolytic anemic, because you would be telling them, oh, your HbA1c looks fantastic, but I wouldn't actually be telling them that. I would be telling them that their red blood cells are dying really soon, and that's why they've got anemic issues. Hemolytic anemia is when your red blood cells die off too soon. That's what it is. So they don't stick around for a long time to be glycated, and they're unhealthy. Well, if you have healthy red blood cells, the spleen is not going to break them down, and they're going to recycle them. And therefore, their lifespan could go up. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that when people are coming to you, and I had this is how it's all happened, especially when I was at MeatRx. I was doing a weekly diabetes meeting, when I was with Sean Baker. We had so many people with CGM saying, what gives? What you just said. My CGM is showing that I have brilliant daily blood glucose, but my HbA1c says I don't. Well, what are you going to believe? Your actual blood every single day on a machine, or capillary testing from your finger, which is really accurate as well? Or are you going to believe a calculation that is just assuming your red blood cells are lasting a certain amount of time? I don't know what I would believe. Maybe my blood. I think that might be the best thing, and an actual reading taken every day and then averaged. So that's I would say it's one of the most unreliable markers that we can look at. I would definitely look at things like your continual glucose monitor if you're using it, finger pricking, so capillary testing, I would trust that more. I would certainly trust your Keto Mojo. If you get labs, I would look at C-peptide, fasted insulin, fasting glucose. I think they're much more important. And you can do other tests for glycation, like the fructosamine test, which gives you an idea of glycation over 3 months. But like I say, labs are now looking at HbA1c, adjusted HbA1c, which takes into consideration the life of the red blood cells. So, Lauren, I wouldn't worry about that if everything else is looking tickety-boo. Are you okay, Richard? Because your camera went off then.
Nailed it. Yeah, all good.
I think you fell asleep because you've heard it so many times from me.
I was blowing my nose.
Oh, well, we could hear you because you took the camera off but didn't switch the mic off.
Oh,
anyway, 50% there. Anyway, right. This is a good question. If you eat too much fat, can you actually prevent ketosis?
If you eat too much fat, I mean, what would we call too much fat? You're not going to prevent the body's ability to be ketogenic. In fact, if we increase the amount of dietary fat, you'll probably see an increase in ketones. But this means that the ketones are being created from the dietary fat over stored body fat. So what we tend to find is that people will increase fat because, some influencers will say to lose weight, you need to increase the fat, which may be the case in some circumstances. So we increase I don't agree with the percentages that people reference in regards to the caloric value from certain percentages of fat, by the way. Eat as nature intended, but talk for another day. But if I were to consume lots and lots of dietary fat, I would produce more ketones. My ketone readings would probably increase, but I may still gain weight because those ketones are being created from the dietary fat that I'm consuming and not from stored body fat. So if you eat too much fat, so if you consume too much fat with carbohydrate, then that's a recipe for disaster. But I've never come across anybody that's eaten too much fat to prevent a ketogenic state. But what you can find is if you consume too much fat, then you're likely to gain excess body fat. And I don't want you to be scared of dietary fat because it's very important that we don't fear the dietary fat. Fat has been incredibly demonized for the last 70 years. So I don't want to demonize fat. Fat is critically important, but eat fat as nature intended is the best piece of advice that I can give. If you're trying to increase hormonal production, so I had a consultation with a client recently, a very big influencer within the space was recommending adding butter to increase hormonal production. But like we've just said with the even chain and odd chain fatty acids, that isn't always the case because they're not as good as creating hormones. Increased their ketones, led to weight gain, and in fact, it created nutrient absorption problems because it led to gastro distress. So there's lots of different levers and things to go out with this, but Faith is a client of mine. We've done one-to-one consultations. Eat as nature intended. If we need additional fats, then we can look at specific sources. My go-to with any additional fats that one were to look into add in would probably be beef dripping. First and foremost, it's one of the cheapest. And again, they're even chain fatty acids. Beyond that, butter, tallow, lard, all fantastic, but beef dripping, I think, would be my my preference.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't beat tallow. You can't beat beef dripping. It's just fabulous and so tasty. Nice question here from Kai Jani. Can school help with accountability and staying on track? Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the big things. You can come on, you can post a message, and you will get members giving you support. Richard and myself go on there, so you will get support. And like I say, there's a meeting in 10 minutes in school. There's a meeting tomorrow, 8 o'clock. There's a meeting on Wednesday, 7 o'clock, UK time, by the way. All live question and answers, which you can attend. And that helps you. You see, you're listening to like-minded people as well, come in with your questions. So that's the whole point of school. And as you've seen in the chat, so many people saying it's a good resource. Right.
100%. This is exactly what I recommend to clients who book me for one-to-one sessions. You know, you can book one-to-one sessions. You can book 30-minute sessions with either myself or Steve, but joining school is considerably less expensive, and we're live in there, you know, a minimum for Q&A twice a week, isn't it? So you get 8 times basically opportunity.
Well, three times.
Well,
Because I do the Wednesday.
because you do the Wednesday also, yeah. You know, but it's you get an opportunity to jump in and ask your questions, because sometimes it's you know, it's cost prohibitive to book a consultation just to ask one question. But you join the group, you can ask your questions, you can bounce off other people. But I think it's an incredible tool for accountability. Everybody needs to be accountable, you know. So it's having that soundboard sometimes can work wonders.
Yeah. Now, this is a nice question. I think it's going to be, I think there might be a polar bear mentioned in Richard's answer. Is there a concern with eating liver when pregnant because of the high vitamin A content? If so, what is the best carnivore food to get folate? Well, you can get folate from eggs, and you can get folate actually even in red meat. But liver is excellent. I had liver tonight. I had lamb's liver, and I've even been known to have raw lamb's liver, but I cooked it tonight with a little bit of bacon. Woohoo! We're talking lovely. But yeah, Richard, do you want to cover this?
Yeah, so look, the whole vitamin A thing, when we look at this, we're looking at several different things. Vitamin A from supplementation isn't the same as retinol. So vitamin A in its true form is retinol. This is what we find in red meat and in liver. Many of the studies which show vitamin A toxicity are not actually coming from retinol. Most of them are coming from beta-carotene studies. Now, beta-carotene is the type of, it's a precursor, in fact. It's the type of vitamin A that is found in plants, but it's not the active form of vitamin A. It's a precursor. It needs to be acted upon by an enzyme called BCMO in order to convert it into the active form. And in fact, it's reduced by over 20 times. So this much beta-carotene is reduced to this much. There are many issues with beta-carotene because it involves that enzyme, as I just said, BCMO, but it also involves, it also requires T4. So T4 is required in the conversion of beta-carotene into the active form of retinol. And what is converted, as I say, is reduced by 20 times. And the double kick in the teeth for this is that T3 is then required in order to process this further in regards to thyroid production. So not only are we reducing the amount of T4 available for conversion to T3, but then the remaining retinol that we have created is then used to convert that T4 into the active form of T3, basically making retinol redundant or less, you know, within the body. So there's a reason why beta-carotene supplementation or beta-carotene from plants is not only not beneficial, but I would deem dangerous, and I would deem that somebody who suffers with thyroid problems to avoid things like carrots and other compounds that are very high. But this liver toxicity or vitamin A toxicity comes from supplementation. Now, when we look outside of this, as Stephen says, polar bear livers contain 1,000 times more retinol than a beef liver, for example. And vitamin A toxicity outside of supplementation of beta-carotene came from the explorers, Arctic explorers, who consumed high quantities of polar bear liver and suffered with this vitamin A toxicity. But again, 1,000 times higher than you find in animal proteins. Now, when it comes to consuming beef liver, we should always eat organ meats in complex with muscle meat, which is exactly what we do. We don't just eat, beef liver, for example. There are certain influencers out there who have consumed nothing but liver and suffered with problems. And this, I believe, is the reason why, because they're not consuming the muscle meat, which contains the other nutrients, which basically reduces and negates any toxicity. So, for example, if we consume muscle meat and organ meats in complex, i.e., there's more muscle meat in the animal than there are organ meats, then the zinc, for example, in regards to toxicity of other compounds, will bind to metallothionein and prevent liver toxicity or toxicity of other heavy metals. So everything that we find within the animal proteins as nature intended is designed to offset any of this toxicity. But you're not going to consume polar bear liver. At least I don't think you are. Folate is found in very high sources, as Stephen says, in eggs and in liver. You don't have to consume an awful lot. So just eat your liver, eat your organ meats in complex with your muscle meat. And this is how much you need, like 3 times a week, essentially, to obtain good quantities of folate. But I would not be consumed with I would not be concerned with consuming organ meats, particularly beef liver. Just don't over consume. You don't need to make it just your meal. Eat it in complex, and you'll be perfectly fine.
Brilliant answer. And I'm smiling at the chat because the chat goes off on such a wonderful, crazy journey as people talk about different things. That is such a good answer. And you're probably the last one to be able to ask a question. I'm just going to try and get the school link unless Richard can do it for me. So while I read this out. Anne, I bought a Keto Mojo. How often should I monitor glucose and ketones? Also, how do I increase my ketones? Some days less than 0.5 with minimal carbs. Well, I'm always boring Richard with my ketone readings and telling him when I'm taking the readings. Okay, so I would definitely look, if you're trying to start a baseline and you've got the money to use it properly to do the GKI, which is the glucose and the ketones, I would do at least a week of when I awake, and then after I've eaten, about 2 hours. And if you've got enough money to use a lot of strips, I would actually do an hour and then 2 hours. And then I wouldn't do it again until I eat again. And then I would do an hour or 2 hours. And then I would also test before and after exercise, for instance, if you know you're going to do something, not after walking, because I don't think that matters so much. And within a week, you'll get a really good idea of what your body's doing. I would also test with certain foods. If you want to go off the carnivore journey and have the odd banana, I would eat a banana and then do the test. And I would definitely do that maybe, after an hour or maybe 30 minutes. This is where a continual glucose monitor is even better, by the way. But you would be put off a lot of the foods that are allegedly healthy if you tested all the time. But it is down to budget because the strips are quite expensive. So how can you raise your ketones? Well, keep doing this way of eating, but I don't think you need to worry about that, because what about the ketones you're using? See, this is a big thing. Do you want the ketones floating around in your bloodstream ready to be used, or do you want them in your cells being used? So this is where urine strips are okay, but not great. And this is where these readings are okay, but not great. Yes, the longer you do this, I'm 6 years into it. So Richard, I tend to send him things, and my ketones are normally around 1, which is not making you feel bad. I'm just saying. But I think 5 years ago, it wouldn't have been. I think it would have been 0.5, I think, and sometimes 0.2. And I think with different levels of activity, it could be down to 0.2 a lot. But I wouldn't worry about it. It is about how you look and feel. Rich, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I completely agree. Look, there are certain stages in regards to ketone levels and types of ketones. So, the Keto Mojo is going to pick up on beta hydroxybutyrate, which is the creme de la creme of ketones. So when we gravitate into this way of living, we waste ketones in the form of acetone and acetoacetate through the breath and through the urine. As we adapt, the monocarboxylate transporters and the enzymes within cells, DHA, CAT, and SCOT, become upregulated. In simple terms, we become more adapted. So there's less, as Stephen says, in circulation for less time. So we can see an increase as we gravitate into our journey in beta hydroxybutyrate in the blood. But when we become fully adapted, so this is somewhere between 6 to 12 months generally, then beta hydroxybutyrate becomes less. My readings are probably anywhere between 0.3, 0.4. I'm lucky if they're ever 0.6. This doesn't mean I'm not creating ketones. It just means that my body's creating them and utilizing them at such a capacity that they're not in circulation. So I wouldn't be concerned. Reduce the carbs, go as close to 0 carb as you can. You can increase ketones with C8 MCT. this is a type of medium chain triglyceride that will convert and create ketones in the liver. Exogenous ketones, there's probably a talk for another day. And you can increase it by increasing the fats. But are you adding in additional fats that you do not require is the question. So as Stephen says, the number is the number. I wouldn't be overly concerned. And how you feel is always the biggest metric.
Brilliant. Absolutely bang on time, Richard. That's really great. I'm just going to put the link in the description. Come and join us on School. If you're a YouTuber and you're fed up with hearing about school, don't worry. Just come back next week, 7 p.m. GMT time here in the UK, state-controlled Britain. We're still able to talk here reasonably freely. But when we're over at school, we can talk exactly how we want to talk. And Richard and I will be over there. Like I say, link in the description. And we'll see you there if you've joined school or you're a member of school. But if you're not, you're just a YouTuber having fun, or you're on X, by the way, because we have viewers on X. Don't know about Facebook because they don't allow us to see the figures. Facebook are just as bad as all the other big tech companies, really. But anyway, right. So thanks for watching and have a good week.